G'day folks, I thought I would get round to installing an extra water tank on my Hurley 9.5 motorsailer. So I filmed a few clips and thought I would string them together for you. So if you think that's of interest, why not give it a hit on the like button and possibly subscribe. And unless you find it terribly bad, why not just subscribe and hit like anyway, and they say that helps a lot. So the story so far is that this boat originally would have had two 50-gallon galvanized steel tanks, one each side, one for diesel and one for water. But at the time of the previous owner, the diesel tank had corroded through. So he had the smart idea that he would use the water tank for diesel. And that's how it was at the time I bought the boat. There was no water supply on the boat as such. And he said, oh, well, you know, if you want to go off cruising, you just buy a whole bunch of bottles of water from the supermarket and off you go. Well, that's not really the right thing. It's possible, of course. So there we are. I bought the boat and no water supply on the boat, and one corroded diesel tank on one side and the diesel filling up the water tank on the other side. So not much space to put an extra tank. However, I did initially put a 80 litre, I think it was, plastic tank, which I bought on the camping shop. And it's really great because it has a circular inspection hatch. And although I installed a deck filler, I can also fill it from the inspection hatches, which is what I would do normally. So I installed that tank, and that's been quite good for 8 years in fact. But 80 litres is not really that much water on a boat. Now, sometime after installing this tank, we had the bright idea of removing the corroded steel tank. This was principally to work on the engine, or the gearbox of the engine. But the idea was to remove the corroded steel tank and at the same time remove the 235 litres, which was now a water tank converted to diesel, because for one thing, there was no way to know how much diesel was actually in the tank. I couldn't stick a rod inside it because it went up against the curved side of the hull. I didn't like to have a tank which would be mostly empty, 1/8 or 1/4 full sometimes or whatever. So we got rid of that. The mechanic guy, he cut up all these pieces and took them over the sidecar to them off, and they weighed one hell of a lot of weight. So in one sense, good to get rid of the extra weight. So the situation was, I had 80 litres a bit higher up in the boat than where it ought to be, but that's worked quite well because I'm in the marine all the time anyway. And so eventually I thought, well, planning ahead, I will put in this 57 litre water tank lower down on the other side. I would have put a bigger tank in, but the way things turned out, there wasn't space because there were a couple of wooden pillars holding up a diesel tank, which I put higher up on the other side, because things just, you put them in at the time according to the space available. We're not starting with a completely gutted boat or anything like that. So this little film was about putting in the 57 litre tank. And this drawing here shows the original situation with one 235 litre diesel tank one side and a 235 litre water tank on the other side. Then the diesel tank got corroded, complicated, isn't it? And the water was used for the diesel. That was complicated, wasn't it? And then eventually both tanks were scrapped. And then I got myself an 80 litre tank, camping shop tank, put it in on one side. And now is a great day when I have time to put a little 57 litre tank on the opposite side, lower down. And to boost the supply further, if it works out okay, I might be able to squeeze another 57 litres behind the first one, which I'm putting in today. Here is a piece of chipboard panel I found in the street, 16 millimeters thick, and I'm going to use it as a base of a kind of box which will hold the future water tank. So I just cut it on the foredeck to 570 millimeters in length, and I'm hoping that if I can hold the camera without dropping it, it's going to fit in that space. I figured it would be too wide, but let me see. There we go. hang on, would you believe? Would you believe? Yes, it's going to fit in there. Exactly, it couldn't fit better if we tried. And it will have 10mm end pieces, probably. Yes, of plywood. And in a moment I'm about to seal the ends before I do any more to it. There we are. Next job, seal the end because it's only chipboard. And then it should last quite a while. Yet another project. Installing an extra, going to be 57 litres of water on the, let me see, which way we're facing. Starboard side to balance up 80 litres on the other side. Well, help balance. And here's the stuff I'm going to use. It's called selladora in Spanish, which means sealant. It's like a primer paint. It took years to find out this. A shop told me before they didn't sell primer paint, but of course they sell primer paint. We just have to know what to ask for. And of course it helps to give it a bit of a stir. So whilst I'm stirring that, I'll switch off and be painting the edges of that board and the edge of that one, which might be the back panel. Now I have cut an opening in the base of what would be a kind of box, and this opening I've just sealed it with a splash of the sealant, and it will line up with an existing similar sized opening on the supporting floor where the old diesel tank used to be. The next job is to mount the backing piece and the end piece onto there and see if I can get it back into the space ready for installing the tank. Now the box to contain the tank is taking shape. I've got the base, the back and the side. And when installed, another piece will go across the front. Anyway, we'll get down to that later on. And the temperature, by the way, I'll put that up here. What does that say? 38 degrees centigrade underneath the wheelhouse shelter. That's a bit hot. If you come back down, it will be 30 inside. Inside we have a insulated roof, false ceiling, insulated airspace and all that stuff. And I'll set this back up where it normally lives. It is on here, and that will come down to about 30 or just over 30 degrees. And I got some air coming in from the hatch. Well, with a bit of juggling and a bit of hokey-pokey, it got in. Base is in place and bolted down. One bolt is all that's required really. It's not going to move forward. Can't move backwards because there's a support behind the rear panel. It can't move that direction because there's a vertical support. And to this side there's a bulkhead. Getting closer, that's the box. Managed to just squeeze it in before I mount the outlet on the base of it. And what's it going to be? One inlet and one overflow on the top. Now I got the holes drilled in the tank. I have the sender which will go in there, and a couple of outlets, and on the underside another outlet. And the outlet fitting should just screw in there and be held in with a bit of silicone sealant. That's the thing. So that's the next job. First the tap, which has more or less threaded itself in, and a little bit of epoxy around the base to help keep it in place. And then on the inside there will be this piece which will screw onto it, and we have silicone sealant on there, so that will fix that. When that's gone off, the epoxy, I can then turn it up on its side and put the retaining piece on the inside. Now I have the outlets in place. The white half-inch outlets have retaining nuts on the inside. The tap underneath has a brass retaining nut on the inside, And the sender, which is this one, it's kind of just threaded itself into the hole I cut, and a little bit of silicone sealant around the top of it, so that should be okay. Didn't want to epoxy it in because then never get it out later if needed to, but we'll see how it goes. It's the 250mm sensor, and it's a fair way above the bottom, but when it's an empty then it will still have a bit in reserve, which they say is a good thing. I prefer to know the real amount actually. Here we are, here's the tank, ready for going in down there. Wish me luck. There we are, a little bit dodgy what with the tap sticking out the base and this and that, but wheelie waggly, and we got it in. So next is to connect up the hose pipe there and the other hose pipe here, and eventually get the front onto it. Now I have the water tank and the front and the box I constructed all round about it in place. I've wired up the water gauge and connected up all the hoses. We have a little wooden piece to make a lid for the right hand side, leaving access to the hatch in case it needs to be in the future. And next job maybe would be a good idea to fill it up with water. In here is the water tank, not the original one that came with the boat, because the owner had used that for diesel and there was no space to put a water tank. So I bought this one from the camping shop. It's about 80 litres. And what I like is they've got very easy access for inspection hatch. I can fill it from the deck because I also put a deck filler. The plan at the moment is to fill this and the water will drain to the other tank and I can shut them off separately and the water will come out from the low down tank. So wait a moment and we'll fill it up a bit. Now it's filling up and I'm just opening the hatch and checking, make sure there's no leaks coming out the pipes down here. Seems to be good. So main tap is underneath there, and hoping nothing will come out the top when it's filled up because there'll be pressure from a tank up there. Might have to switch off and monitor the job. Sorry chaps. And here's the gauge and all the wiring, which will go in this little cubby hole behind it in a moment. It just happened to have a curve, the right shape, and was better, I thought, putting it there and drilling through the bulkhead, which would be 2 inches thick, this bulkhead, and laminated in fiberglass both sides, so it was much easier and more accessible to view, I thought, up there. The gauge is wired into the sink pump down there. So if there is enough water down below, I can switch on and see what happens to this. Already, that's the pump going. Wrong one. Sorry, that's a shower pump. That won't do. Sink pump. Second chance. See? That's it now. It works, and it will gradually come up and let me know when it's nearly full. The artwork was already on the boat. Some hippie people had it, and I scraped it off everywhere else except this little section here. So that's filling up and give me an idea how long it's going to take as well. I wonder if there is enough water to come out yet. What's this one? Trickle coming through. Needs to prime a bit, I expect. So I'll leave it a bit longer. I just jumped up in time to switch the water off because the upper tank is full, because the water coming out the marina is at high pressure and it's taking a while to trickle down to the other tank. So maybe have a rethink. We might have to have a separate filler for the lower tank. We'll just see how it goes first. Well, see if we've got any water coming through. Sink pump is on. There we go. So, I'm not getting the right reading on this thing. Say empty and it's not empty. So it's come up to about a quarter full. I was a bit worried in case my wiring was the wrong spec or something. So now I can continue and fill it a bit more. That's good. I'm sure I'll have a good idea how much water is in there. It's just a question of work a bit more on the filling system. A few more refinements. Now we got a bit of plywood covering the right hand side. The main idea of that is that across the top of that there will be a support to give a bit of assistance to a platform above in there in the dark, which has a diesel tank up there. A bit too high, but that's what happened when I bought the boat. So a bit of support will go in there later. Basically, there's the water tank and stuff as far as the daylight will allow. Well, the project failed a bit so far because it's leaking from this bloody commercial water tap that I put in. Would it be better just to put a through hull? So that will end up in the bilges and have to be rethought. It was no big deal to get the fitting back off again and a whole bunch of water spurted out. And then the main bilge pump sprang into action and pumped the bilge water out over the side. So that was good. It proves the bilge pump works. So I shall now refit this. I shall make an improved version and refit this fitting back onto the tap. I buy these little epoxy tubes from the Pakistani bazaar for €1 each, and very, very handy indeed they are. So I've epoxied the metal, two pieces of metal together on the inside. I can hold it for a bit while it sets, which it will do. It will go off fairly quickly, it's pretty hot. And a view from the other side. I've dropped a little bit of epoxy in that joint where the two pieces came together. And this leftover stuff here is because those little tubes, a whole bunch comes out of one tube and nothing comes out the other tube, and then plop, a whole bunch more comes out. Well, that's the way it goes with these tubes, but they're very useful. Now is next morning, and time to see if I can put this back on the tap. And I'm going to put a little bit of the Loctite here along this little bit of the thread here and put it back in place. Now every day I usually do between half an hour and 2 hours work on the boat for maintenance, and today's job, apart from this, was to do a little repair on the cover. I made this cover by hand about 3 years ago, and it started to get torn, and it's time to make another one. But I want to put a solid wooden roof just in the centre part, and that means going quite a long way to the store and buying the proper marine ply for that job. And then I shall have to redesign the sides, because I do like the way the canvas is very easy to just put up and down, and so many different arrangements you can make by having canvas sides. Of course you can put them up all together. Anyway, back to the job, which is to put this back in place, and I shall lift the hatch and see if it's dripping water. Now the fitting is back in place, including the rubber seal, and it's time to fit the plastic hose, which I've laid just there, because I have to give it a blast. The ship is leaking water. Well, I discovered it's not leaking from the thread at all. It's leaking from where that comes through the plastic tank. Probably the strain of trying to tighten it up too hard or put the hose on too hard or something. So that's something to think about for later. Today I've got to go and get the piece of wood 2x2 from a store the other side of town. That is if they've got any. And then another day I'll maybe go and get a proper through hull and do a better job putting this fitting in the plastic right angle through hull next time. If this doesn't work, I can't get this to work, that is. Back again to the spare tap. So it wasn't leaking from here, and it wasn't leaking from there, at least I don't think so. It was leaking where this piece comes out of the tank, and it doesn't, there was no possibility, I couldn't find any washer, or where to put a washer, I couldn't find a washer that size. So I used this thing, I couldn't even find a nut. So I used this, and I cut off this piece here. So there's a possibility that I can get a spanner on there, if I can get my hand. What I like about this kind of tank is it's got this big access hatch there, but there's not much access to the access hatch because we've still got the old engine in the way. Now here we are in Spain, and I figure this nut to be 23mm, and that's larger than I got. My largest spanner is 22mm, and my largest spanner on board is a British one, 22.225mm, because that's 7/8 across the flats. So we need 23, or what else do we have? We have this large adjustable. I don't like using adjustables if I can buy the proper one. Let me look in my sockets. Hang on. Where? Here we go. Sockets coming up. Aha. Now this looks hopeful. What's this one? 23.3. And what's this one? This should be bigger. Take that out. This one is, what's that say? 15/16, which is got a number which was faded out, but it's bigger than the other one. One on the left was 23.36, and the other one, which was 15/16. Is that what it says? 15/16 is 23.8mm. So this one should fit on there. And that would definitely, that one fits, look, that one fits. There we are. So that nut, this nut sold in Spain, this is a strange thing, it's actually an imperial size. It's an imperial size of 23.8mm. And I don't need to cut the bit off the end because this is the practice one, this is the spare one. So that should fit on the piece in the tank. I just need to find a handle for it, which I've got over here. Do you see? Handle, long handle, and somewhere else I've got a shorter handle. Now I quickly took the wooden front off and brought the tank forward to a more manageable position. So I'm going to have a feel of the nut from the inside and see about tightening it or taking it off altogether and sealing it. Worst case scenario, the whole piece will come out and be resealed. I have got Sikaflex. Now, do I have Sikaflex? That's the question. Let's have a look in the stores. What we've got up here, we've got a box of something. What's that got in it? Well, that's silicone sealant. We'd have some little epoxy tubes, but it's run out. Next one, let's look in this one. Oh, here, what's the next one? Let's see what we've got in here. Get it open. There we go. There we go. Now, we've got this epoxy filler. It's like Loctite. What's that, Loctite? Watertight. I did like watertight, but you can't buy it in tubes here. So I'm paying about 20 or 30 euros for delivery. Epoxy sticks. What's this one? This is epoxy kind of stick thing as well that you can make up. Bit of cheap old wood filler. And here we have it. What's left of the Sikaflex, you know, the small tube. And you can feel that's gone off. So a little bit was used and the rest of it gets thrown away. I'll maybe cut a slot in the side and see if it's usable. But basically that's the thing, you buy the Sikaflex and you buy it in a great big long thing and you have a gun with a handle that squirts it up. That's great, absolutely fantastic, no problem. But the product is just you have to buy the great big tube and use it a couple of times, and then a couple of years later, because you know, years do go by and you have to buy it another God knows how many years all over again. Here we are inside the tube. Open it a bit, look, and it's gone bad, no good whatsoever. And of course the thing is, it means a trip to the shop, the nautical store, which is the other side of the city again, near the Cologne monument. And here is their catalogue. Very useful to have a catalogue, because you can plan lots of stuff, and with any luck you can find your stuff in the catalogue. But not always, not always. And then sometimes they have to order it and it takes a week to get in. But as I say, it's very good for planning stuff and finding stuff you never thought about. And here is the thing I might have been better to use. It's like a right-angled see-through. Through hull, tired of all that walking around today. And that's in the store catalogue. That's that one. Just there. There you go. And I didn't know it was in the catalogue. I never spotted it before in the catalogue. There are many things in the catalogue and it's all in Spanish. But they do have an English index, which sometimes has the things in the index. So what would that be? That might be this gizmo up here at $7.90. In another store you might find that for a couple of euros. But marine shop, $7.90. Which is okay if it does the job. And that would, I think, have been a better idea to start with. But as I said before, we can only put the stuff we can find, and we can't always find this stuff. So we do the best with the materials we've got. And the best thing to tighten up the Jubilee clip is not the screwdriver, but this gadget, little mini socket set. And you get that on there and you go click, click, click and tighten it up, which I'll do, and I can't hold the camera. I'm sorry, I haven't got a fancy gadget to hold the camera and film the job at the same time, but that's what I'm going to use. Now I've tightened up the Jubilee clip and I want to get some water in, so I shall just open this little valve I put down here. And which way does that go? That way? Yes. And water's coming in. So I don't want to fill it up too much, but I'll fill it up a bit and see if any leaks are coming out. That's what I want to do. And I'll also get an idea from my little counter thing, water level float thing, how much is in. Bearing in mind it won't come up at all until it's got a couple of inches of water in it. But I'll be keeping an eye down below and see if I spot any leaks, and it'll be shut off quickly. There's a long bloody water, do I? Right, chaps. There we go. Is it weeping? Has it got weeping angels above it? Well, time will tell. Yes. No. Yes. My big socket on the job had a bit more force on it. Has it done the trick? We shall have to just wait and see about that. Now here's the thing. I think that the major problem is that this lip or flange on the tap isn't wide enough to press up against the tank itself, and it really needs to have a washer on there, which would be about 20mm opening, and I haven't been able to find one. Now if I put in this type here from the marine store, if that outlet is 12mm, then I figure I'd have to cut an opening of about 30mm, which I don't want to make a big wide hole like that. So I'm going to persevere with this one. I'm going to try once again another one or two different shops to see if I can find any big washers. So once more back to the store, see what I can find, and if not, there is another plastic in another shop. There's another plastic thing like this, but it's It's about 20mm thread, not this 30mm. That's the shop I went to yesterday, so I got to go back there again by the look of it. But gradually we'll get there, we'll find a solution. Now is next morning, another day in paradise coming up, and before that we shall have a quick look and see what we've got in the basin. Down here, any drips? Can we reach? Yes. Not all that much. Less than I thought. Less than I thought, but still dripping away water. Could be less because maybe the tank is pretty low. I didn't fill it up too much. So anyway, we've got water in there, so that means failed job. And we have to see where we go from here. Just back from my excursion. I had to go and get a battery for the wristwatch. Then before that actually, I went to a small chandler's in the port and I asked if they got any washers to fit on the end of this tap, and the lady had no idea what a washer was. And I said, how long have you been working here? Are you new? Well, she said the shop, they just opened it from further up the road, but she'd been working years upon years in chandlers, but she still didn't know what a washer was. And then I asked her about the brass through hulls. Are they brass or are they bronze? And she said they're brass. All the chandlers here have brass, which is copper and zinc. And then after a while the zinc is actually an anode, so the zinc leaches out and the metal loses its strength. It turns white or pinkish, and it breaks off when you turn the handle. Well, the handle's probably steel anyway, which is not that great either. So beware of brass and choose bronze or DZR if you can. Anyway, I went to the chandlers, and the big chandlers, that is the bigger, and I bought this gadget here, which was €10.90, and it has a 12mm outlet, but you have to drill a great big hole. And then I went to the big department store, and they have what do you call it, plumbing department. And I bought some of these fittings. This is 38mm, right? I bought some loose ones, but they wouldn't sell them loose because they hadn't got tickets on. And when you buy them wrapped in plastic, you can't tell whether the nut is going to actually fit onto the thing you've just bought. So anyway, the guy had to package these up, which I didn't really need, and here we go. For example, this one here, this would take 38mm hose coming out of the water tank if I do that in the future. I don't know what the price of it was, but this one was like €5. So what was the price of the other one? Well, if this curvy one is $5.55, it's quite difficult to work out when the names are all unreadable. Didn't cut that. I figure this one was €3. A little bit for the what's it called, nut. We call it a nut or a washer to go on the other side, so definitely more than €5. And in the marine catalogue that would be €22. Of course it's not going to be identical, but this would be quite adequate for the water hose coming out of the tank and go up to the deck fitting, which I will do eventually. So that's the bits and pieces. Now this here is one I bought from the big department store, the plumbing department, and this was $3.35 for two of them, compared to $10.90 for one of them. And this has the advantage that the thread here is the same size thread as the hole I drilled. Come off. For this one. So this one has a good flange, both sides, standard fitting, and I think I shall thread that in and seal it in with epoxy and keep this other one for future use. I like to keep some spare parts because in the future you're doing a job, you don't want to have to stop and go running across the town to some store and scrabble around for pieces which you can never find. So at the moment this is looking like hot favourite. Now here is another thing This is a bit of hose, right, and it's a half-inch equivalent. In Spain it's 12 millimeters. If it would be British half-inch, it would be 12.3 millimeters. So that's 12 millimeters. That's supposed to fit on there, and to do that I'd have to heat it up. This is the piece from the marine store, and that outlet is 5/8 of an inch, about 15 or a bit more millimeters. For this to fit on there, I've got it heated up with a hot air gun. It'll go on there, it'll shrink down, it'll be a wonderful fit. With difficulty, but it will be a wonderful fit. Now this one from the department store, it doesn't fit too badly on there. It gets seems to get bigger as it goes up and on, so it will fit on there. Of course they're all going to have Jubilee clips in any case. Here's a piece of Spanish engineering from the garden department of the store, or another store. If this is 12, if they measured it, it's a little bit less than that. This is more like 11 millimeters, which means that would just slide on. A piece of cake to slide that on there if you have it with one hand. Hang on. There you are. You see, I can just push that on there without heating up or anything, let's see. And what that means is that that's not going to be a very great fit. And when you tighten it with a Jubilee clip, it can't really compress this plastic stuff. So it might do the job, it might be adequate, but generally speaking you're better if the fitting here is a bit larger than the inside diameter of the tube. Then heat the tube up and it will slide on there. Put a bit of grease or silicone on there and it will slip on once it's heated up, and clamp up with your Jubilee clip, one or two if you prefer to use two. So that's a little bit about heating up, very important. The question then is which of these three outlets I'm going to use. Well, the first one I tried already, that one. I didn't maybe use the right sealant and it didn't fit because it wasn't a good flange on the base here. I've got this one from the marine store, which is quite a bit wider than I want to drill out because I've already got a hole that will take the fitting of this one more or less. And let's see, this size. I already have a hole made which is that size, so I'm going to try and fit that into it. And for the sealant I've decided to go with Sikaflex. So that meant another walk back to the marine store for 291i, but now they changed the name to 591. I guess that might be because they seem to have redesigned the end of it, so that maybe will seal up better afterwards. Well, we'll give that a try. So the next move is to see if we can fit this onto the tank. I had to file just a tiny amount from the hole, and now it's going to fit in there, and the next job is to get the sealant in there first of all. Right, so it has a kind of screw cap and a lid which will go on afterwards, and a squeezer to squeeze it up from the bottom. Well, I don't know which rocket scientist invented this. It reminds me of Frey Bentus, but you just screw in the top, pierces the tube, turn the bottom, and squirt comes out. There we go. In actual fact, the sealant came out of the tube extremely well, was easy to position with the point. I'm about to put a little bit inside the thread there, and I've put the cap back on, so that will keep a bit better than the previous version did. And here we go, I've got some on the nut and left the opening without blocking the opening, and now just get it inside the tank. So, hang over the side, upside down, that's what it looks like underneath, and the nut is on the inside. Just wait for that to set, and then we can connect it up again. Here we are then, early in the morning, and time to fill up the tank. All connected up, and where's my valve? down here. Just open this and the water is coming in. Oh, good idea. Put the lid on it, won't it? Pleased to say that down here, or is it down there, no leaks. It's looking all good and dry, so I can leave that for a bit to fill up, then put the front back on it. Here we are, coming back up on the gauge, and the pump has probably got an airlock on it at the moment. Not coming out. There we go. Coming through. And getting back to normal. Just coming up to half full now. Now I've got the front piece back into its place and the tank is full up. And if my voice sounds upside down, that's because I'm hanging upside down, filming this. I hope I don't fall into the engine bay. Now it's jumped up to full, so I think we can say mission accomplished on that one. I have this Dutch tile which I bought once upon a time in Cambridge Market and brought out with me, and I have a nice little hanging mermaid bottle opener. But I don't have any Spanish tiles, and the boat's been a long time in Spain. So maybe it's time to rectify that, because I have a nice little tile, and I came across it in the street and somebody threw it away. I'm thinking that might just be possible to find a way to mount it up here. And I'll tell you why. Because in Spanish it says "Quien me mira vive más," and that means whoever looks at me will live longer. So I know it was meant to be a sundial, but it might not be a bad idea for a water tank gauge. What a laugh, eh?